Breakfast hack. You can crack eggs with fragments of silicon.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. First European interview of the year, of the season. Um,
Hmm.
Getting my measurements of time mixed up there. Anyway, joining us this week is Bruno Carvalho of QUByte Interactive. I hope I pronounced that right.
Oh yeah, that's about right. We actually have a little different pronunciation for Carvalho, but that's okay, no problem, guys. I know it's a tough one for you guys to pronounce in English. I understand that totally. Yeah,
Hmm.
problems with Brazilian surnames, last names and stuff.
All right. Uh, Not the first time I've ever, mispronounced a foreign surname. Probably not going to be the last, but you know, you go, you just work with what you can hope. But anyway,
Exactly. Yeah.
anyway, um, right. So starting off, we'd like to get to know the people behind the studio, behind the games, and all that sort of deal. And we do that by asking them what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level.
Wow, that's a very interesting question because video games came into my life very early. Like I might say that when I was about 4, that's when I got my first video game, and that was in a Atari 2600. And that's the moment like I fell in love with the media. Like I have memories of me and my brother playing some of the Atari cartridges. Like boxing and other games like skiing and stuff. And since that very early age, I decided that this is something that I like doing as an entertainment. That was my favorite form of entertainment. But professionally, I have two very different moments, two very distinct moments. The first one was back in 2010. That's when I started, when I joined a video game podcast, a Brazilian podcast. So that made part of my life as made of means of speaking, talking about video games. And 5 years later, that's when I joined QUByte. Interesting enough, the moment I joined QUByte was actually to assist them in the game design of the beat 'em up that was actually inspired by the podcast I was part of. So I would say that my working relationship with video games, they have these two uh, it started with these very two distinct moments.
I mean, I think that might be a first for us. Like, I mean, we've got a lot of people who were into video games at a very young age, but I can't recall us ever having a person get into like the business of video games because of a podcast. At least not before now. So that is an interesting tact. And I suppose my question out of that is, how is that help? How has your video game podcasting experience helped you, in this more professional capacity at QByte Interactive?
Yeah, so the podcast itself was kind of a time capsule for us, right? Because the podcast was based in majority of on nostalgia. So we talked about our gaming days of back in the 80s, back in the 90s. So, and the game that actually came out of it is inspired by those generations. So it was a beat 'em up, 16-bit ask. So I would say that a big influence of what we did with that game came from these conversations we had in the podcast, those memories that were uh, brought up during uh, the recording of the podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also I believe that a part of being a game designer is actually making use of these experiences you have in life and try to bring that into video games. So how do you make a video game? Is not only based on the technical aspect of it, but what can you bring of your own experience into the mix to make a better game, right? So I believe that that's how it helped.
Well, that's good to hear. Like you've poured a bit of your self into some of these games, more or less. And anyway, shifting a bit. Now, QUByte Interactive. What is this company exactly?
So QUByte Interactive is a publishing and development game company, a Brazilian one, right? So we are established in Brazil. We started making games back in 2010, 2010,
Right.
and we started as most indie developers start, like developing games for mobile platforms, for mobile.
Right.
And with time, we decided to pursue new challenges. So we started assisting other studios in bringing their games to the consoles. So at a very early stage in our company, we actually started doing consoles already because there was a necessity that we had because we had several partners uh, worldwide that required our expertise. And this is something that we are very, very proud to say that we are never satisfied with what we have, right? So we are always after something new, and that led us to make very strong partnerships worldwide. That led us to go into the business of consoles very early in our company, and that pretty much brings us to where we are now because. Uh, 10 years later, we have 30 plus games released on multiple platforms. And what we do now is a reflection of that because not only we develop our own intellectual property, our own games, but we also offer publishing assistance to smaller indie devs that don't have means to bring their games to these platforms, such as Xbox, PlayStation, and the Switch, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Right. So a few questions out of that. First of all,
Mhm.
how big is QUByte in and of itself? Like, are there a dozen people there? 100?
So currently, you got it right in your first guess. That's a dozen people. The current size of the company right now, we have a team of 12 people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's divided into the first party products, as we may call, and the porting team, right? So these two teams are I would say our most uh, staffed teams, if I may say that. Yeah.
Right. And how does the search for published entries work exactly? Like, do you go to the other companies, or do they come to you?
A little bit of each actually, because of the games we have already published in these diverse platforms. We
Mm-hmm.
have both cases in which we actually uh, search for games that would interest us to have them published, and we look for developers that we may have a previous relationship and check what they have going on and if they have any interest in going. Uh, to those platforms, but also because of the games we have published, we have certain indie devs coming to us and asking if we could assist them importing their games and publishing that games. And this is something that is really important. Uh, we not only publish the games, but for companies that they don't have the technical acumen or the technical knowledge to bring those games to the platforms, we also assist in porting. So we do porting and publishing for them.
All right. And now, in terms of porting, is that just consoles only, or do you assist with like mobile or PC developments as well?
All platforms that we primarily do consoles because that's most of the necessity that these smaller indie devs they have because publishing for PC and bringing your games to PC and mobile are usually easier. The
Sure.
bureaucracy there is not that heavy, but
Hmm.
we assist them on all platforms. So if they have the need to bring it to PC, we do so for mobile as well. Because our team, like we said, we had the experience of bringing to all those platforms, PC and mobile included.
Okay, that's good to hear. And is that the same deal with your internally developed titles, or do you just do those for the consoles?
We bring them to currently. I would say like our latest releases. We have been focusing on PC and consoles, mobile not so much because of the format of the games. But we do have plans of getting back to mobile. But in that case, games that are developed specifically for that platform.
Hmm.
Because there are games that we need to understand that they work better on certain platforms. And our latest releases, they are leaning towards console experiences, or PC for that matter.
Right. That makes sense. In terms of development, making sure your game matches the platform and so on and so forth. Anyway, I suppose we should take this time to get into some of the games, since there's actually quite a lot of them that you sent over in terms of highlight videos. Uh, anyway, let's see. I'm trying to. Is it 99 Vadias? How do you pronounce this?
Yeah. So the name is 99 Vidas because
Vita.
Vida means life in
Right.
Portuguese. So
I'm like, I
that would
remember
be.
that. I remember that being the name of a technical device at some point. Uh, poor Vita.
So yeah, in that case, that translates to 99 lives, right? So that's an eternal joke that we have with video games because back then we didn't have achievements. So you had as a kid growing up and playing video games and usually playing the same games over and over again. You challenge yourself, right? You had to challenge yourself. And one common challenge was, can I bring this game to 99 lives? Can I make it? So that's an internal joke that we had. And that's why the name of the podcast and the video game was that, right?
I get where I get where the comedy is coming from here. Yeah. And does the title play into like the actual gameplay? Do you have to, do you have 99 lives in the game?
You have to try and get 99 lives, but you don't start with it. We actually make a few jokes about that in the game,
Mm-hmm.
right? But in order to finish the game in certain difficulty levels, you may need the 99 lives that are part of the title.
I'm like, that sounds difficult.
It is a little. The game actually, we did offer plenty of options for the player. So there is an easy level, which actually makes the game, as the name states, easier. But if you're really up to the challenge, you can go to what we call elite
Uh-huh.
difficulty setting. That's the one that you might need the 99 lives to finish. Yeah.
Ooh. Is that like one hit, one kill sort of deal?
No, but enemies are definitely stronger. You're weaker, enemies are stronger, and they are plentiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds like what an elite mode would consist of. Uh, and how big of a brawler is this? Like, is it four stages, six stages?
So the base because we actually have two different versions of the game. The base game I would say is eight stages long. So you have six stages that are part of the regular campaign and two bonus stages that you find during the campaign. Uh, and the definitive edition is actually comprised of 16 stages total. So it's like double the size of the original game.
Wow, that's quite an amount for a brawler.
It is actually the base game, the campaign, the main story takes something around 1 hour and a half to 2 minutes to finish with each character, and the characters they have different endings. So there is replay value there. If you want to see the whole story, you actually need to finish with each of the characters, and there's a total of 11, which you start with 6, and then you unlock them as you play. You know, so we try to add replay value to it by actually giving reasons for the player to come and resume, or get to another playthrough.
Certainly an interesting way of handling a brawler. Like, I don't think I've seen that in that particular genre. And is it just available on the Nintendo Switch?
No, not really. Actually, this game is available when it was released. Because it's important to remember, this game was released back in 2016.
Right.
So back then it was released on PC, but we also have versions for PlayStation Vita. We have PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. Yeah,
Yeah. It's quite a lot of versions.
it is. Yeah.
Like, anyway, so shifting forward, we've now got the Vasara. Like, is that how you pronounce that?
That's a Japanese name, but let's go with that. Yeah, that's Vasara or
Vasara.
Vasara. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, I have been noted that, not necessarily getting,
No,
languages.
we all are. You don't need to worry about that. Like foreign words, they always are trick to all of us, right?
Yeah.
So we do the
So-
best we can with them.
Yeah. So with Vasara here, this is a shmup or a shmup collection.
Exactly. So Vasara is not well known, like for the Western world, because that was a game that was released in Japanese arcades back in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a game that was very famous among those who played it, right? So there we saw an opportunity to try and revitalize the franchise. So we actually, in this case, we approached the original developer, that was Visco,
Mm-hmm.
who was really famous back then for releasing several of their games for Neo Geo.
Yeah.
Uh, so they do have plenty of games in Neo Geo, except Vasara was limited to arcade, so not even Neo Geo got a version of this game. So we thought, okay, this is such a good game that is because of happenings limited to our Japanese arcades. So can we do something and try to bring that uh, to a wider audience? So we took up this challenge. We talked to the original developers, like I said, Visco, and actually we acquired uh, the rights for the IP, and then we decided to do something different with it, right? Because uh, there was the option of bringing each game individually. There was the option of bringing up a collection of the two original games, like the two arcade games. Um, but what decided to do is, how can we bring this experience to people who don't know this game, but also offer something new for those that may already know the game. So that's when we decided to make this collection, which is actually comprised not only of the two original arcade titles, but also an entirely new 3D experience. So we actually, based on the original IP, we created a new game mode that is called Endless, Vasara Endless, which is this new game built from scratch, of course, respecting the original IP with those same characters, that same level of challenge, but brought to a newer, uh, to a more modern way of playing. So instead of going with vertical orientation, we decided to do widescreen. So the game now plays on widescreen, and we make use of that. So we actually added new moves to go with those. So we added a dash move that doesn't exist in the original. We made a selection of the bosses that would work in that new game orientation. So in the end, we got something that we hope would please not only fans of the genre but fans of the original Vasara. In that sense.
And well, what's been the reception to the collection here?
Oh, that has been very, very positive actually. So we were really happy with the reception from like the community that was already aware of the game, but also we got some very positive feedbacks from newcomers to the franchise that really enjoyed. And interesting enough, we actually had I would say a 50-50 reception on preference. We had half of the people that would love the fact that we kept the original games as they were, and would have like half of the people actually enjoying more of the new experience, of the 3D Vasara. So that was really interesting. We were very happy with the reception, and also that was our second game to have a physical release.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was 99 Vidas, so both of these games we had a limited physical version release, and we were very happy because they would run out in a matter of minutes. So we were really really happy because people seemed to like what they were seeing, you know, mainly given that those were either games inspired by classics of the old days or in this case actual classics of the old days, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is definitely a lost gem here. When I think of shmups of that particular era, I think more Ikaruga, Mars Matrix, more
Mhm.
bullet hell than, this is actually a bit different than what was more in the focus of at least shmup fans over here. Um, because I've never heard of this, like, until more recently.
Mhm.
So it is good that such a lost classic was able to rise and find a new audience.
Yeah, and actually, something that you mentioned that is really interesting because people are used to bullet hell games, and this one has a very interesting difference to those games because it has a huge focus on melee combat. So actually, one of the great differences they had from the other games of the time is that you actually make use of melee combat for not only offensive maneuvers but also defensive, right? And that's one of the reasons that really stood out to us, and that's why we wanted to bring this game so people had more exposure to it.
And melee combat in general is something generally not seen in shmups. It's kind of in the
Yeah.
name there. So yeah, definitely a unique twist. I'm trying to think. Like I think there were. I'm trying to think of another game that used melee combat, and I'm blanking. Anyway, moving ahead because still got quite a collection of games here. We have the Breakers collection. Now, what is this game, or what is the collection of Breakers?
Yeah, so this is an upcoming release that we have. It hasn't been released yet, but because of the relationship we had already established with Visco, they did like the results that we had with Vasara, and they decided to work together with us again to bring another of their games, which is Breakers. So that's a fighting game of the same generation back then, except this one they got a release on consoles as well. In that case, they got a release for the Neo Geo, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it is another of those games that didn't have a huge success or a huge penetration, market penetration here, in the Western world. So we decided to bring that as well as a collection. So um, in the same vein of what we did to Vasara, we acquired the rights to for the IP, and we are working to bring that as a collection to the current platforms as well, so more people can experience this game.
Well, that's good. Uh, and is there any particular trick to these games, or is it more traditional?
Um, they do have like gameplay mechanics that make them really interesting. So uh, usually when we talk about fighting games, right, you try to get the games as balanced as you can get, so no character is overpowered. The way that Breakers plays with this sense of power is different. So you definitely have characters that are on purpose more powerful than others. And the way that the game finds to balance that is that you can actually increasingly, how can I say that? tune your character to a specific situation. So you become better, that's true, while playing, so you learn more of the game, but also you learn how to use each of the character's strength in your favor over the other, you know?
Hmm. That, yeah, that's a bit of an odd one. Like, you know, I'm struggling a bit here with the whole power dynamic because, yeah, don't really see that in fighting games. Like, a lot of that, granted, is due to fighting game fans who will scream very much if things are unbalanced.
I mean, sometimes you do, but when you do,
Yeah.
it's usually like there's some other mechanic that
Right.
overbalances it. Like you get more tries or more life or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's the optimal situation. It's like, you know, when you have like three dominant fighters, looking at you, Marvel versus Capcom 2, you know, it's like there may be some screeching there. Uh, and anyway, so you seem to be working a lot with Visco Corporation. Um, I'm not sure if this is a question you can answer at this point in time, but you know, it's like given how successful things seem to be going right now, do you have plans to work with them again in the future?
um, I what I can say is that we are always looking for new opportunities to exploring um, IPs with our partners. I may not speak on specifics right now, but of course we always have talks around that. You know.
Of course, of course. Um, that's about what I expected, but you know, still, you know, never hurts to ask. Unless you know things NDAs get broken, then that's a bit of a problem. But you know,
No,
it's
it's
not.
okay. Yeah.
Well, it's like we had that happen once, and it was a whole thing. Like anyway, next game is. I believe this is one of your originals, 2020, 2120 Mars.
Correct. Yeah. This is our latest IP. This is the game that we are currently working on. Our development team is currently working on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what it is in an action adventure game. I would say people commonly refer to that as Metroidvanias, right? So it is an action adventure game in the veins of Symphony of the Night and Metroid, but with a twist. In this case, we are talking about uh, a sci-fi orientation with exploration of Mars. So uh, we wanted to bring something different to this game. So usually when we talk about Metroidvanias, you have in mind those games like the ones I mentioned, Symphony of the Night and the Castlevanias that came after, and Metroid, which is the game that pretty much started it all. That's why Metroidvania, right? So Metroid comes first. Yeah. So this sense of exploration of worlds that are usually non-linear, and you have to acquire new methods of progressing. And we wanted to do this one as a big homage to these games, but also bring a new twist to it, in the sense that the combat in this game is not as it would seem or what you would expect from a game like this. I can say that we get inspiration from titles of different genres, including Marvel vs. Capcom, one that you brought up. That
Yeah.
plays a big role in our game here as a reference for gameplay.
Uh huh. I'm like, that's a bit unexpected, but that's probably good when we're talking about Metroidvania, since not for nothing, this is a fairly popular genre in terms of like indie developers, and you know there've been some really great titles that have come out of that mold, like Hollow Knight or
Correct.
Guacamelee come to mind. You know, so um, now when you talk about the combat not being what it seems, it sounds like it's going in a very fighting game direction. Since you said Marvel vs. Capcom 2, like,
Yeah, sort of actually. I would say that people who expect this to be one way or another may be surprised, because what we are trying to achieve with uh, 2120 Mars is a balance of melee combat, but also long range combat. So
hmm,
we thought of something like, what if we bring fighting games into the world of Metroid, right? So how would that work? And that's what we are aiming with our combat system here.
And I'm assuming that's also like not Smash Brothers, since
Um, no, 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 not
uh,
Smash Bros.
because that's like the actual fighting game Metroid participates in.
It is, yeah. But no, it's different. It's a little different from that, yeah.
Uh-huh. And well, the video that we have here is a teaser for
Hmm.
this for 2120 Mars. Uh, when can people expect to see more, like some actual gameplay of this title?
Very soon, actually, because since the release of this teaser, we have been working hard on bringing more to the people who got interested in that. So I can definitely say that very soon people will see not only a continuation of what they have seen here, but a lot of gameplay.
Well, that's good to hear. So we're supposed to keep an eye out for that. Like, do you have a venue chosen? There's like 100,000 different events going on because E3 isn't a
Hmm.
thing. This, is it like showing up at one of those, or is it going to be a premiere on your YouTube channel?
Because of an NDA, I may not comment on that specifically. But
Okay.
let us say that we definitely have some talks on having that featured somewhere else. But if that doesn't happen, we are holding our own event for that. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. All right. So next up is Box Align. Now,
Hmm.
what is this title?
So Box Align is a project that we chose because it was our very first porting and publishing deal for the Switch, right? So this is one of those games that I mentioned earlier that we partner with smaller indie devs that don't have the means or don't have the technology to bring their games into the consoles, and that was our very first successful experience because um, it's a very interesting puzzle game, which was actually our first for us to bring a puzzle game into consoles, and
Mhm.
we assisted them porting the game to Switch. And interestingly enough, it was a game that charted right off the bat upon release. That was our first game that got charted in on Nintendo Switch on eShop, because of the nature of the game, and we were very very happy with that.
Right. Oh, we have a question from the chat. They want to know if you can mention the main character's name from 2120.
She does have a name.
Uh-huh.
Her name is Anne, but she goes by Charlotte. We'll,
Okay.
we'll give more details on that during the game, but yes, she does have a name. She's Aine, or you can call her Charlotte.
That's a. Those are some names. Like, anyway, getting back to Box Align here. This game was a tremendous success on the Nintendo Switch. Um, was it particularly easy or hard to port to the device? Like, how did you find Nintendo Switch development?
So we decided the first time we decided to bring a game to the Nintendo Switch was actually with one of our own IPs, was 99 Vidas, right? 99 Vidas. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the game that started that got us interested in bringing or taking it to Switch as a platform, and that was the game that we ported first of our own IPs. And Box Align was a consequence of that. So okay, we have the dev kit, we have the relationship with Nintendo from previous experiences because we already ported for other Nintendo platforms, such as the Wii and the 3DS, right? So we had the expertise and the relationship with Nintendo. So where do we take it next? And we saw that Switch was actually a very good opportunity to try and merge that kind of experiences that you had with mobile and console, because the way that the Switch works, it is this kind of hybrid of mobile, right, or handheld platform with the experience of the consoles, including touch screen, right? So you can bring that, and that seemed like a perfect fit for a game like Box Line, because the original version of the game relied on touch controls as well, right? So we
Hmm.
took up that challenge, and to be quite honest, that was not that difficult to bring it to the Switch, because the Switch as a platform offered the control options that we needed for that, right?
Hmm.
What we did face as a challenge bringing the game to the Switch is because it may not seem so, but all of these effects that we see on screen, like the lighting effect, the reflections, they don't work that well with Switch, because we have to remember that among the platforms that we have available to us currently, Switch is a different beast altogether. You know, the way that they work, the architecture of the platform is really different from not only PC but also the other consoles like PlayStation 4 and Xbox, right? So that was the challenging part. So how do we bring this game that makes use of these, even though it seems simple, but it makes use of lighting and reflection effects that the Switch as a platform doesn't handle that well. So that was, I believe, the biggest challenge that we had. As far as gameplay wise, everything we wanted to do, we could adapt very well because of the possibilities the platform offer. Yeah.
Mm. Once again, this is a question that I'm not sure you can answer. Um, have you considered building like a game for the Switch hardware specifically?
I can answer yes to that to that question. Yes.
Hmm. I'm guessing that there's not much you can answer beyond that, though.
Not at this time. Yeah.
Okay, but once again, definitely something to keep an eye out for in the maybe near future, maybe far future. It's hard to tell at this point. Um, anyway, so the next game is well the Zen Chess Collection. Like
Hmm.
now, obviously, this is a game of chess, but what makes this what makes this game stand out among other chess games?
Yeah. So Zen Chess is actually a puzzle game based on chess, right? So instead of presenting the player with a regular chess match, if I may say that, what Zen Chess does is take very famous plays from chess. So we take like the chess masters, the most famous moves that they had, or their most famous victories, and try to transform that into a puzzle. So um, both chess lovers, but also newcomers, could try and perform those plays. You know, so the the catch behind that is that, of course, chess masters, they have a different mind and they can get to that point of the game because of the nature of their line of thought. But can we try and replicate that to a very basic level so people who don't even know chess can enjoy? And that was the challenge for Zen Chess. And actually, we were very surprised on how people received it, because they received it really well, because not only it is minimalistic in aesthetics, but also in the way that the game plays out, and people who don't even know how to play chess could get into the idea behind Zen chess, and that's I believe that's what makes it stand out. It's a chess game, but it's more of a puzzle game for people, and that works for people who don't know chess, in depth.
That is indeed a unique spin on things. Like it's not just well be more like literal interpretation of these names. Like it's just chess with say relaxing music. You're getting into a Zen state of mind. But this is actually a bit different than I would have initially expected. Or I also know like this is not the only chess-based puzzle game from you guys. Indeed, we just like this past week reviewed Hang the Kings, um, which is another chess-based puzzle game.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, because of how successful Zen Chess was, uh, this is we have a partner that's called Minimal, and they specialize in these kind of puzzle games.
Mm,
So you're right. We do have some other titles that are indeed chess-based puzzle games, like Night Swap or Hang the King or Unlock the King. So that's what this developer, the minimal, specializes on. You know.
yeah, yeah. I think we have Night Swap 2 up for review in a few weeks. Like, just check. Yeah. And anyway, moving forward. Now, this game we are familiar with, Dogurai. We did a review of this a few, it was like the last game review we did last season. You know, it's a Game Boy inspired action platformer, and I'm really interested. Like, was this one of your titles, or is this a ported title?
Actually, this is a ported title. So the original developer, like at Bear Games, Hungry Bear Games,
Right.
they actually wanted to bring the games into consoles, and that's one of the opportunities that we had on working with them, both for porting and publishing, you know.
Mm,
And um, I believe that it fits really well because some of our games they already have this kind of aesthetic, like the 99 Vitas, right, that we address here. So we kind of work with titles that have this kind of aesthetic of the 8-bit or 16-bit era, and in this case of Dog Ride, that went even uh, further down the line because it's 8-bit, but it's 8-bit Game Boy esque, you know. So that was really nice
mm,
of them to actually work with us on that, and the game works really well. You know, I'm a big fan of the genre, you know, because the action games of the 8-bit era, you know, that these games reminds me a lot of the classic Mega Man games that we had, right? So
right.
Mega Man on the NES, and I believe that the option or the choice of bringing that in Game Boy aesthetic makes it stand out like from the games that we have currently. You know, I love that static. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like if there's a Capcom game this reminds me of, it's more Strider. Um, with the whole sword thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I get what you're saying. Though, also granted, this game, how do I put this? Is maybe a bit. It would have been a bit too good for the Game Boy. That is to say, like, I don't think I would have seen an action game that would have been able to do that screen
Yeah, it's
justice.
very
Like,
fluid. The Game Boy is known for not
yeah,
being
Yeah.
fluid.
yeah. That's more. Yeah, that original Game Boy screen, kind of bad. Like, I'm kind of glad that handhelds have advanced past screens that had a lot of ghosting.
Yeah.
Um,
We,
but
we
yeah,
we do know like that dot matrix screen from the original Game Boy. It does introduce some issues when it comes to developing games. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But no, as I recall, this was a really good game. Um, we all really liked it. And if you want, and for those in the chat who want to watch our review of that, post the YouTube link there. Um, anyway, and finally, last game on the list here, Him and Her. Now, what is this title?
So this is also a puzzle game, but this is actually uh, gravity inspired puzzle. So you actually have the character that needs to find their lover. So they need to find a way to their lover. So this is actually our latest ported game. So as of the recording of this show, right? Because there might be another when people watch it. But
Of course.
what I really like about this game is that it's very simplistic, but yet a very artistic view. You know, and basically what you have to do is that you have um, your character that needs to find their significant other, right? And in order to do that, you actually need to deal with the way gravity works in this realm. So actually, what happens is that the scenario follows your attention. You're always walking forward, right? So if you try to move to another part of the scenario, it actually moves with you. You know, and the challenge is how do you work with that kind of gravity in your favor? So how do you make jumping in this kind of scenario, right? So if I jump, I'm always facing forward. But if I try to jump to a platform that is not in front of me, how can I rotate the scene to make it be, so I can move forward, so I can progress. And this game, like, is in my opinion, a very interesting puzzle game, and it actually charted during the release. So that was also very good for us. The reception of the public to this game was something that got us surprised. To be quite honest, yeah.
That's always a good thing, though. I think, like, receptions that are of that nature. But let me see here. And finally, we have a game that's not on the list, but I saw it was like the latest video on the QUByte Interactive YouTube page, Hexon.
Hmm.
What is Hexon?
Hexon is also a puzzle game, but different from this one, which is actually puzzle platformer. Hexon is more traditional puzzle. So what happens in Hexon is that you actually have a board, and you have to place all of the pieces that you have on at your disposal in this board. So the way to beat each of the puzzles is to make use of the pieces that you have, and they come in different formats, and connect them in the board according to the color of the pieces, and find an exact fulfill of that board. And you have boards that start very small and they increase in size, and you have different formats of pieces. So this is more of a traditional puzzle game. I would say something in the lines of maybe a tangram. I don't know if you guys are familiar with tangrams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say something in the lines of that. You have to make the pieces fit into the boards, not only matching the format but also the colors.
Um, I'm like reminds me a lot of Hexic. I'm not sure if you ever played that game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Just
do
maybe.
understand people would expect something similar because of the name, yeah.
Mhm.
So what do they have in common is the format of the pieces, right? Because it's a hexagon,
Right.
but the way Hexic plays is very different from Hexon. Yeah,
Yeah. Hexic plays like more Tetris or
exactly. Yeah.
Duel. This is more, yeah, like a tangram kind of deal, which is, for those who don't know what a tangram is, it's a bunch of, you assemble a bunch of shapes together and you have to fit them all correctly. You probably experienced it, even if you haven't, uh,
They were
not
big
too,
in math class around the time I was in elementary school.
yeah. And like, I know, like that kind of thing appeared on like the Nintendo Wii and so on and so forth. And did this game just come out or is it upcoming?
This one just released, so as of the recording of the show here, it's been released like 3 days ago. It was released 3 days ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's enough time to get a bearing on how well it's been doing. Like,
No, I believe it's too early.
right.
Yeah. we usually start analyzing the performance of our games over the course of a week, because that's when we have the proper exposure on the store.
Yeah. Right. So we have another question from the chat. The price of QUByte games are usually at a low cost price. There is a basis for this. Do you think more publishers can do the same?
We usually price our games based on the appeal that they have to the general public. So we think we something that uh, we have been really really careful at at QUByte is that we try to not overprice our games. So we analyze the kind of experience that the game offers, and what, like, we as gamers would expect to pay for a game like that, you know. So whenever possible, we try to make the price of our games as reasonable as we can get, you know, mainly because we know that first gamers they have a lot of options and they need a reason to play your games, and they need sometimes they need a kind of an incentive to try your games, right? So we
Mhm.
don't overprice. So we believe that okay, so if you're overpricing your games, you're trying to, and I'm not saying other developers do, okay, I'm just saying that we as a company try not to overprice our games, because that may actually compromise the view of the game. Because if you pay a lot of money for a game, you expect that experiences to reflect the amount of money you pay, right? So we try to charge the right amount for our games. So we try to be reasonable. And of course, that what also comes into play is how much money you put into it, right? So sometimes bigger games require a larger investment, and you need to compensate for that in pricing, right? But if we have games that we can bring up for a reasonable price, there's no reason we would overprice them just to make like a quick buck on a lower volume of sales. You know, we prefer to have more people playing our games for a lower price than actually charging more and have fewer people playing.
That makes sense. And it's pretty. That's pretty typical from what we've seen. You know, like how much is Hexon here? Probably $1 to $5.
It's $1, yeah.
Yeah, that's about what we would expect from a puzzle game of this nature. Also like mobile would be taken into account as well. I'd imagine because mobile pricing is its own kind of thorny issue.
Correct, yeah.
No, but anyway, so yeah, I believe that's all of the games we have here. Um, I'll see if my colleagues have any final questions, or if the chat has any final questions they want to get in at this point in time. Um,
I think I'm good.
okay. Galich?
Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied.
All right. All right then. So yeah, that'll about do it. Bruno, thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today. Lovely chatting with you. Hopefully, we'll have you on the program again sometime in the future. Maybe when 2120 is more able to be talked about. You know?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you all, gentlemen, for the invitation. It's a pleasure being here. I love talking about video games in general, and it's a pleasure to talk about our games at QUByte.
Mhm.
Thank you, guys. All of the guys who are watching us and have watched
Yeah.
us here in Fragments of Silicon. And whenever you guys want to talk about it again, and definitely let's talk about 2120 when we have more to talk about. You know?
Hmm. We'll be in contact. And to all those who are listening today, or might be listening when this recording goes out, if you liked what you heard today, be sure to subscribe. Click the follow, click the notification bell. You do all the things that you have to do to get informed when things go up these days. And our next recording will be on Sunday when we do our traditional review session. So until then, I shall wish you good gaming.